Ninth grade U.S. History and Geography exam. Chapter 6, Industrialization. Number 1. Which of the following correctly identifies the entrepreneur to his industry? A. Rockefeller to oil, Carnegie to steel, Pullman to railroads. C. Rockefeller to railroads, Carnegie to steel, Pullman to oil. Or D. Rockefeller to steel, Carnegie to railroads, Pullman to oil. Number 2. Which of the following led to the creation of labor unions? A. Employers required to work 12 to 18 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week. B. Employers providing dangerous working conditions and often damaged equipment. C. The huge difference between the amount of money made by workers and the amount their bosses made. Or D. All of the above. Number 3. Why were some industrialists during the industrial boom called robber barons? Why do they call the men who own the companies robber barons? A. They were ruthless leaders who used by any means to drive up competition. B. They provided vast amounts of money to help with government projects. D. They created huge companies that employed lots of people and kept prices low. Number 4. All the following factors contributed to the immense industrial boom of the early 1900s except which one did not cause the industrial boom? B. The government's support for business. C. A growing urban population. Or D. The mass production of the typewriter. Back to the top of the page. Number 5. The most dramatic inventions of the late 1800s were the A. Microwave and phonograph. B. Light bulb and telephone. D. Refrigerators and stoves. 6. How did electricity change American life? A. It changed how businesses and factories operated. B. It made possible the invention of new appliances. C. It helped cities and industries grow. D. All of the above. Number 7. The Knights of Labor focused on, that's labor union. What did they focus on? A. Negotiation and aggressive use of strikes. B. Negotiation and use of strikes as a last resort. D. Organizing only skilled workers. Number 8. What factors limited the success of unions? A. Government supported management. B. The use of violence and scabs to break strikes. C. The public began to associate unions with violence and danger. Or D. All of the above. True or false section, 9 through 11. 9. The popularity of the automobile encouraged entrepreneurs to transfer more oil into kerosene. It's saying that cars use kerosene as their oil. Number 10. Recognizing how important railroads were, settling the West, the government made large land grants to the railroad companies. Or 11. Railroad companies which sought to build thousands of miles of track became the biggest customers for steel. Moving on to Chapter 7. Chapter 7, Immigration and Urbanization. Number 12. The Chinese Exclusion Act. A. Decreased Chinese immigration. B. Created segregated classrooms. C. Settled the disagreement between China and the United States. Number 13, settlement houses were found in the late 1800s by Jane Addams was one of these. Who set up the settlement houses? A, the new immigrants did, B, social reformers did, or D, industrialized workers. Number 14, which of the following is true of the gentleman's agreement? A, it decreased Japanese immigration. B, it resulted in segregated classrooms. Or C, it caused anti-American rioting in Japan. 15. Why were fires so dangerous in the late 19th century cities? A, most buildings were made of wood. B, people lit their homes using kerosene lamps and candles. C, cities did not have enough water to put fires out easily. Or D, all of the above. Turning the page over and moving on to question 16. Question 16. The belief that salvation is achieved through service to the poor is called what? The belief that you go to heaven through service to the poor is called what? A, refurbishification. C, the social gospel. Or D, Americanization. 17. Many immigrants refer to the U.S. as B, Gold Mountain. C, Goldilocks. D, Home of the Brave. 18. Which statement is not true? So we're picking out the false statement here. Which is the false statement? A, Asian immigrants went primarily to California. B, European immigrants came from many countries. Or C, all immigrants came from Europe. Which one is the false statement? 19. Which of these things did not lead to urbanization in the late 19th century? Which one of these statements did not cause cities to grow? A, the new invention in farm equipment. B, the influx of new immigrants coming to the United States. C, the rising crop prices in the Midwest. Moving on to the true and false section, 20 through 22. 22. Nativism is an overt favoritism towards native-born people, native-born Americans. 21. Conditions in cities had little effect on people's health. 22. Some American workers felt threatened by Chinese workers because they could work for lower wages. The matching section in the box. You have two choices for each term. 23's term is melting pot. Is melting pot B, an influential member of the reform movement, founding several settlement houses which helped cultivate social responsibility towards the urban poor? Or is melting pot C, native-born people called America this because of the mixture of cultures and races making the country distinct? 24, urbanization. You have two choices. C, native-born people called America this because of the mixture of cultures. Or urbanization is D, the growth of cities caused by immigrants and rural dwellers immigrating to urban cities. Next matching one is 25, Jacob Riis. Is Jacob Riis A journalist who realized the filth and overcrowding and airlessness of the slums exposed hardships of the New York City slums? Or is Jacob Riis E, designed to assimilate people into wide-ranging cultures into the dominant American culture? Number 26, Jane Addams. Who is she? Is Jane Addams A journalist who realized the filth and overcrowding and airlessness of the slums expose hardships in the New York City slums? Or is Jane Addams, 26, B, an influential member of the reform movement, founding several settlement houses, which she helped cultivate responsibility towards urban poor? Finally, 27 should be whatever you have left over. But 27 reads Americanization movement. Is the Americanization movement D, the growth of cities caused by immigrants, rural dwellers migrating to urban centers? Or is the Americanization movement 27E, the design to assimilate people into wide-ranging cultures into the dominant American culture? You are finished with the first part, 1 through 27. Now find the next recording for questions 28 through 57.